Welcome to the Supplement Engineer Podcast. My name is Robert Schnetsky. Today we are joined by two members of the Body Bio team, and Dr. Tom Narowski and Jess Kane, who is the head of marketing. Dr. Tom is the head of R&D for Body Bio. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
So I'd always like to start with the origin stories of companies that haven't been featured on the podcast before. So can either of you, either Dr. Tom or Jess, since your grandparents were the founders of Body Bio, can you go into a little bit of why the company was started, how it's grown over the years, and what's the mission statement of the company?
Sure. My grandparents, Ed and Patricia Kane, started the company about 27 years ago. Previous to that, they were biohacker types. You know, the type of people who really took into consideration the foods and what was around them, what they were putting into their body, experimenting with different supplementation, and really heavily researching fatty acids, lipidomics. They were really focused, especially in the kind of 80s and 90s, on what was going on in that space. So their focal point has always been fatty acid research. They developed a blood test, basically, a blood chemistry analysis, as well as a red blood cell analysis with Kennedy Krieger at Johns Hopkins, and started to use that as the basis for showing people what vitamins they needed. And the original purpose of Body Bio, the original mission was, what do you need? And no one was really able to figure that out in the kind of 90s, early 2000s. They started around the same time that a lot of these big supplement companies have started. They kept it a family business. We're based in central New Jersey, and really dedicated themselves to making supplements that worked, making supplements that did what the blood tests were showing there was a lack of. And really out of that came the development of our phosphatidylcholine, which we could talk about a lot more. Our essential fatty acid blends that we create, our Elite supplement, which is the highest concentration of electrolyte, really mimics the blood levels of electrolytes. And a lot of the other supplements that we make, we're not kind of a general supplement company that's making everything. We make very specific supplements for very specific needs.
Now with the electrolyte solution, I want to go back to that because I've done some research into, hypertonic, hypotonic, and isotonic solutions. If you match the electrolyte levels in the supplement to that of the human blood, would that slow down absorption at all, since you would want to have a gradient, some kind of gradient between the human blood and the solution that you're mixing?
Your body will extract just what it needs from what's available.
Okay. Perfect. That's good. Thank you, Dr. Tom. Now with the fatty acid research that y'all were getting into, obviously keto is huge right now. Have y'all seen a tremendous uptick in interest in the company just in general?
Huge.
And then have y'all ever thought about going all in and just labeling everything keto, just from a marketing thing to try and catch people's eye more towards the research y'all have done in the market of essential fatty acids?
It's not who we are. We have to stay true to who we are. And that's the reason we've lasted so long. It's the reason why we're trusted by so many physicians. So one thing I didn't mention was, up until about a year ago, we really only sold to doctors. Where we've seen a huge growth is through the insanity that's happening in the supplement industry, which is, last I read, it was a $46 billion industry. And it's the interest in ketogenic and paleo, in health at the cellular level, in what people can do to optimize their bodies and to ensure longevity without getting diseases affecting you. So I think it's that all combined has really helped us to grow, especially in the last kind of 2 years. We've seen a lot of that growth happening, especially when we opened up direct to consumer. It changed because you have people who are really taking their health into their own hands. So for us, we explored, do we change the name of some of these supplements? Do we talk about them in a different way? And I think what we're really trying to do is stick with the fact that we created these supplements for a reason. We make a pure version of a complex of phospholipids that really works. We make a really awesome butyrate that really works. And although people may not know what those terms are now, they're starting to. And so without calling it keto gut or something like that, or, beta hydroxybutyrate for the ketogenic diet, you're pigeonholing yourself. I think that, who knows, keto might be like Atkins. It's here one day and gone the next.
Yeah, as somebody that sees the industry and the market space flooded with really, really, I'll just be very blunt, crappy keto design product, keto quote unquote, just because it's got a sprinkling of 3 grams of some kind of BHB salt in it, it makes it ketogenic all of a sudden. It just, thank you for not doing that and, jumping the shark, so to speak, with the supplement names. It shows there's still some integrity left in the industry. I question that heavily sometimes, but there's still some good guys around.
The American mindset is such that if a little bit is good, a lot more is better. And with the keto, they get carried away and they eliminate all carbohydrates from their diet. And they don't understand that the brain needs glucose as its main source of fuel, although it can make glucose from amino acids, but it's a lot easier for your brain to get them in the meantime from some carbohydrate. So they give up the things that they really need that have ancillary benefits, like broccoli and the other cruciferous vegetables. And some of the root vegetables are quite healthy. You don't have to cut out everything that's starchy. So the keto, I don't know. Well, I can't say it's going to backfire, but right now there's some question as to whether or not keto is as important as it was marketed to be. I've seen some people who look emaciated because they're on a ketogenic diet, and their blood tests are not what they should be.
Yeah. So, Dr. Tom, can you go into a little bit more about your background and how you came to join the Body Bio team?
This is a long story. I went to medical school. I decided to bail out when I realized the pharmaceutical company had too much concern and influence over a physician's life and over the practice of medicine in general. I made a transition into preventive medicine, which is the study of nutritional biochemistry, which today is called clinical nutrition. Using the medical background, I was able to transfer that into biomedical nutrition and become a biomedical physician. I was recruited one day by a former student of mine after I had retired from a different career, and he asked me if I was looking for something to do to stay out of my wife's hair. And she said, yes. And I came to Body Bio to find out what they were all about. I had written my dissertation on essential fatty acids, had no idea that Body Bio was an essential fatty acid company. So there was some kind of divine intervention that put the two of us together. I interviewed Mr. Kane. I interviewed him more than he interviewed me to find out if this is a place I wanted to be. That was 12 years ago. I guess it worked.
I would say so.
Yeah.
So in your current state with the company, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? Give us a little glimpse into that. Are you, I know R&D, but are you actually formulating the supplements? Are you more in extracting the ingredients from the current body of literature, saying this is what we should investigate, and then we can formulate from there?
Yes, more than that. And I also, now the FDA does not like to hear this, but I do associate with hard science an ingredient with addressing a condition. And there is, I will never say anything that I can't substantiate. In the medical literature, there are thousands of papers that support what we do and directly affiliated or directly associated with a pathological condition. And yes, this particular supplement can do this. So what I do are called meta-analyses. I will read 10 or 15 different papers about a topic. I will extract their main ideas, put them back together again and say, hey, this has to work because these 15 people agree that it does. A concern that I have in this field is that a person or persons will follow a single medical paper and call it the Bible. That is wrong. A lot of people will read a medical paper, which, by the way, takes about 2 or 3 hours to read a 7-page paper. They'll read that paper, call it Bible, act upon it, and find out, oh, I made a mistake. What they need to do is look at the references in that paper and see if the 72 references agree with the gist of that paper. Because there are writers who will fudge. They will add 15 or 20 papers to bolster their credibility by having a whole list of references. And in the long run, those references do not apply to what the paper is supposed to say. So this bothers me. These 3 papers.
You would think those kind of things would be caught. Wouldn't those errors be caught when the paper is in review with one of the peer review journals or whatnot? Or
Yes, you would think that, but 2017 was the year of retractions.
yes, it was.
Yeah, there were more retractions than I would have ever wondered would have happened in the medical field. What's happened? Well, maybe it's payoffs. Maybe it's quid pro quo. You accept my paper, I'll accept your paper. I don't know what's going on in the medical world, but I have always been taught at University of Wisconsin, Tufts, and Purdue that you don't look at one paper, you look for two other papers by different authors in different venues, sponsored by different bodies, and then you draw a conclusion. Mm-hmm. And that's what I do. I look at meta-analyses and I draw a conclusion and say, yes, if a doctor calls and wants to know if phosphatidylcholine is indicated for liver disease, I have the proof.
Yeah. Okay, let's touch on that one, because we're starting to see that ingredient. We've seen it pop up in a few nootropics for the neurohackers and biohackers out there. Let's do a little bit of a deep dive, if y'all want to, on phosphatidylcholine and the role it plays in maintaining health and wellness.
You've got 60 trillion cells, maybe 100 trillion cells, and every one of those is at least 51%, maybe 54% phosphatidylcholine. So that's the stuff you're made from. But it's not just phosphatidylcholine. When I was addressing physicians at the University of Medicine and Dentistry medical school, I would put on the whiteboard a circus tent. And the fabric of the circus tent is phosphatidylcholine. The two masts in the middle of the tent that hold up the ceiling, that's cholesterol. Take that away, the cell collapses. Right. The poles around the periphery of the circus tent that hold up the sides, that's saturated fat. You need some saturated fat for structure. Too much will interfere with the flexibility of the flapping when the wind blows, and then you're going to wind up with something that's too stiff to hold up to the wind. And then the flaps that allow people and the entertainers in and out of the circus, that represents essential fatty acids. So you take any of those things away from that representation of the cell, and you have a collapse. But that fabric is phosphatidylcholine. Mm-hmm. And that allows food and energy sources in, and it helps to escort garbage out. And the word crap is a good one in this particular case. But PC does a lot of things. It's a surfactant for the lungs. People who suffer from COPD need a surfactant, something to keep their lungs moist and flexible. That's phosphatidylcholine. Mm-hmm. It helps to restore liver function because it is particularly fond of what hepatic energy entails. So physicians use phosphatidylcholine for hepatitis A, B, C, and even cirrhosis. And it also, well, it helps to control cholesterol. It convinces your liver to make the cholesterol your body needs, not what some pharmaceutical company said it should be. Back in 1987, 249 was a pretty decent cholesterol level. But as soon as people began to substitute red yeast rice for a statin drug, the statin drug companies were worried they're losing money. So this drug salesman would tell a physician, well, we found that your cholesterol needs to be 225. So the doctors were writing more prescriptions to lower people's cholesterol, and the same thing happened. Then they said, well, your cholesterol needs to be lower than 200. But people don't realize that cholesterol helps you to make vitamin D from the sun. It makes your sex hormones. Without cholesterol, you're going to become a eunuch. And in a way. And cholesterol makes the myelin sheath that coats our neurons. And what happens in the brain when your cholesterol levels go down? You become depressed, testy, you become acrimonious, you get to wear a hat that says Major Curmudgeon. And these are things that make it hard to survive. So you need a higher cholesterol level, but PC helps your body to make what you need.
What I love, the PC that I learned from Tom recently is it's a huge percentage of the gut mucosa.
And that's it. 70%.
70%
of your gut mucosa is phosphatidylcholine. And if you've got IBD or IBS and you want resolution, phosphatidylcholine.
That's how I got into body bio was I was just so unhealthy and really struggling with my health. It had so many colonoscopies and endoscopies, couldn't eat anything. I was just in a really bad state, and I'm in my early 20s. It was just bizarre. I had thyroid issues. I was hospitalized for a thyroid storm. And after taking the supplements, for, I sat with my grandfather and he said, just take this stuff, and gave me a handful of pills. I didn't complain about the size, as a lot of people do. And it changed my life entirely. And now I'm so much more cautious about what I take and how it affects things. I think that PC, what I'm noticing is people are talking about nootropics, and they're looking for ways to get this kind of optimization and brain optimization. And sometimes the most simple thing gets overlooked. And they're looking for all these different components. And Tom and I have spent a decent amount of time talking about this, of CDP choline and all these things, and how to increase acetylcholine. And it's a lot simpler than that. It's just that a lot of the PCs out there, and a lot of what's labeled as PC, is not PC. It's not. It's unfortunate that PC is it comes from all seeds, right? It can be extracted from all seeds.
Right.
It's primarily extracted from soy. If it's just extracted from soy, and most PCs that you see on the market are just lecithin packed in oil,
Right.
it's not going to do anything in your body. It needs to be a naturally occurring liposome that actually will get through to the cells, go through the digestive system. And that is what my grandfather figured out how to extract. So he was able to isolate the phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylethanolamine, and phosphatidylinositol, and put it together in a complex of phospholipids that is liposomal. That's why ours is different.
That was going to feed in my next question, is how can consumers just by and large understand, or I guess recognize, better quality forms of PC versus another one, aside from just buying the Body Bio? They see the Body Bio label and buying that one, but is there anything they can look for if they like to get into the research, or if they like to read ingredient panels and really dial into things? Is there anything they can look for from a consumer standpoint that it would be indicated that this is a better quality one than a poorer quality one?
Unfortunately, I mean, you look at most of the labels of things that say PC, and it says, it can say liposomal. There's no regulatory board. There's no one that can say you have to prove that this is a liposome, creates a liposome.
FDA says anything that contains 35% phosphatidylcholine, 35% lecithin can be called phosphatidylcholine, but really it's triple lecithin.
That
And the
doesn't do
matter
anything.
is, all the carbohydrates and proteins that accompany lecithin interfere with the metabolism of the phosphatidylcholine, which is a component of lecithin. Mr. Kane figured out a way to extract the phosphatidylcholine with the ethanolamine and inositol fractions to add and to enhance cell signaling and to maintain mitochondrial health. There are at least 3 or 4 other phosphatidylcholines on the market, and I cannot denigrate any of them.
No, they're legit.
Yeah, as you may like a Lincoln and somebody may like a Mercedes. They both get you where you got to go.
Right.
And the distinguishing feature of Body Bio is the presence of ethanolamine, which the body converts to phosphatidylserine. Phosphatidylserine, as an absolute supplement, does improve memory for the short term, but phosphatidylserine has other characteristics that are not necessarily welcome. One of those is that it improves clotting factors, and people may want to avoid that if they have particular issues with blood viscosity. Phosphatidylserine also lives on the inside of the cell membrane. As the cell membrane or as the cell dies, which it does, apoptosis is programmed cell death, phosphatidylserine begins to telegraph to the outside of the cell and says, hey, we're getting ready to die, so let's make a new cell. Well, we don't want to hasten that by taking exogenous, which means outside the body, phosphatidylserine. And it may work for a while. Grandmom who begins to show signs of early dementia may take phosphatidylserine. After 6 months, she's back to normal, but all of a sudden, she reverts to the things that you don't want to see her have. So we don't like phosphatidylserine as a separate supplement. We let ethanolamine make the conversion. And inositol, it sends messages from one neuron to another, so you need that. and some of those messages are disrupted in certain psychotropic diseases. So body bio PC is different because of the ethanolamine and the inositol.
I think something that it's this conundrum we have is, how do we put the research out there? How do we put our findings out there? How do we do that in a way that's compliant with the FDA? How do we, keep everybody happy? And to answer your question as to what people can look for in their PC complex, I can't tell you, because it's unfortunate in the way that it can be labeled. It's just not it's not necessarily fair, I guess. But I can tell you we've got thousands of physicians that have used our product, and I think that's really what we go on, is the trust of people who have seen success with it.
Now, going through the deep dive of PC that we just went through, for people that are into the supplement research and understand the inner workings of it all, we'll geek out to that stuff. And I can stay with you for, the vast majority of it, as can most of the listeners on the podcast. There is that segment of the general populace, though, that isn't going to have a clue as to, what you just said, the intermolecular workings of what PC does in the body. How do you reach the general consumer and, get them to understand that PC is a vital component and can do things to better their health and wellness and cognitive function and just the way they feel, amidst all of the other kind of propaganda and nonsense supplements that are being hawked on the TV doctor shows?
It's hard. I mean, I think for me, it's about talking about what the role of the cell is in the body and what it means to be healthy at a cellular level. If you think that on that tiny of a level, disease begins within the cell. We have all these things that are out there nowadays, these toxins and pesticides and things in our makeup and things in our foods. And it's coming at us, now we've got 5G, it's coming at us from like every direction. And if you strengthen, PC makes up the majority of the cell wall. So if you keep that cell wall intact and healthy, your cells are going to be healthier. And that's been something that's starting to really resonate with people. You're starting to see a lot more discussion about like what keeps our cells healthy. I noticed even Centrum there was a commercial for Centrum, for a multivitamin, about keeping cells healthy, right? It's like, so that was really surprising to me, that it's really a topic that I think is going to be very rapidly growing.
It's the foundation. Just as your house, if you have a crumbling foundation and your house begins to list starboard or port, then you have a problem. And the first thing, well, you could always raise your house and let it stand up on a bunch of cinder blocks, but you got to fix the problem. And that's what PC does. It gets to the foundation in foundational medicine, membrane medicine. For many years, we thought the nucleus of a cell controlled everything. All it does is house DNA. It's the cell membrane that tells the cell what to do, or that tells the cell what to do and when to do it.
Yeah.
The nucleus just tells the cell what it is. Hey, you're a kidney. We can take a nucleus out of your kidney cell, put it into a stomach cell, and swap them around, and they change. But it's still the membrane that tells the cell what to do. And that's the library of information that runs the whole show. That's the machinery that runs the body. And once that is established or reestablished or set right, then healing can begin. I work with Chinese researchers. We brought some here to open up the integrative medicine division of a Philadelphia University hospital. And they toured the American medical community before they got into the integrative division establishment. And they kind of made fun of American medicine. They said, you can go to any doctor in any city, in any clinic in the United States, give them a list of symptoms, and every one of you will walk away with the same prescription. Or if not the same drug, the same class of drugs.
That's true.
And the doctor will say, come back in 10 days. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else, because they don't do a differentiated diagnosis anymore to rule out all the possibilities. But the Chinese guys went on to say, you cut the brown off the top of the grass. You sprinkle it with fertilizer and call it done. No, not in China. We separate the grass blades to look at the bottom to find out what's causing the brown at the top. We fix the bottom, then the top gets fixed. And that's what PC does on your body. It fixes the bottom and the top gets fixed.
I think something I've experienced too with PC is you may not feel it right away. So it's one of these things that's, because it's such a foundational supplement, it's not something that somebody, unless you're extremely deficient in it or you're dealing with a specific use case or disease, you may not feel it, but it's like it's not even that it's a multivitamin. It's just so foundational that over time, when you take it and then you stop taking it, you will notice it.
Yes.
You will absolutely notice it. But it's not like you take it and feel like, totally different the next day. It's accumulative.
Oh, obviously it's going to be naturally occurring in the diet and a few dietary sources, or we can get the components of it and assemble it in our body. What foods is it predominantly appearing in, and why do you think that we're not getting enough of it in our diets?
Egg yolks, loaded with phosphatidylcholine. Commercial PC is not made from egg yolks because the saturated fats can cause it to turn rancid.
Yeah, oxidize and spoil.
Unless you're very careful. But phosphatidylcholine is not everywhere. Legumes would be a better source, but as far as foods go, there's not a lot of that out there. So supplement is essential. Your body will manufacture it from raw ingredients. Anything that contains phosphates or phosphatidic acid will help. But if you take the supplement, you're getting phosphatidylcholine.
Right. Now there's a liquid version and a capsule version of PC. The liquid version supplies around 3 grams of the phospholipid complex, and the capsule one has 1.3 grams. I guess, why the difference in the two dosing ones? And is there any specific reason why y'all created an oil one and a capsule one, just for the people that don't like swallowing pills?
A lot of people can't. They're taking it.
We discuss
this all the time.
Disgruntlement about that here. The older capsules used to be bigger.
Bigger than they already are.
2 capsules then were closer to 3 grams. But people didn't want to swallow anything as big as their thumb. So the capsules were made smaller. But nobody changed the number from 2. Actually, you need 4.6 capsules to equal a teaspoon. But nobody will take that. However, with any supplement, once you get front loaded, you can become on autopilot. So once you start out with a teaspoon a day, or even a tablespoon if you have a pathology to be addressed, after you do that for a week to 10 days, then you could get by on the 2 capsules as a maintenance level. In supplementation, there are 3 levels. There's the maintenance level, the prevention level, and the therapeutic level. When I was in education, I would take, I'll give you an example of vitamin C. I would take 500 milligrams twice a day. When some of the students, and including medical students, would come in coughing and hacking and sneezing and nose blowing, and the room was loaded with pathogen, then I would go to prevention level, and I would double that amount of vitamin C. But at the first sign of a flu infestation, I would go into the therapeutic level, which would be a whole bunch of vitamin C, and usually in a day or 2 would knock it out. Same thing with phosphatidylcholine. You get on the maintenance level, and you're on cruise control.
Excellent. Jess, let's go a little bit into your duties as head of marketing. Like, obviously, that could mean a number of things, but let's get down. Like, what's a day-to-day for you?
For the last about year and a half, it's been trying to take something that's quite complex and keep the integrity of the product, keep the integrity of Body Bio and what we're doing, but try to communicate it to everyday people, to health freaks, to people that are dealing with severe diseases and trying to feel better, and chronic illness and inflammation, all these things. So it's a lot of that. It's a lot of communicating everything that we've discovered over the last 25, 30 years and putting that into terms that are understandable. It's establishing our direct-to-consumer website. We've had a new website for about the last year. We've taken into consideration a lot of feedback from our customers and from our practitioners. We're going to be launching a new version of it in January. It's product education. It's everything that for so long we were doing with physicians, but in today's world, people want to address it themselves and are having a hard time finding physicians that will accommodate that. So they're doing their own research. So we're trying to put a lot more of that research out there, a lot more interesting blog content. So yeah, it's been a really big rebrand. The difference between our old look and our new is huge, and just opening up all different types of avenues for marketing.
Y'all have a lot of products available on the site. Is it cumbersome trying to juggle all of those and keep track of inventory and making sure some products don't fall by the wayside and trying to keep them present in the minds of consumers?
It is and it isn't. I think a lot of the products that we've created over the years were created for specific reasons. Take our vitamin B complex. It was created, one of them is a high potency complex of 9 B vitamins that work really well together. The low potency is a complex of 6 that are made for people who cannot take certain things. So a lot of them are made for specific reasons for, children, for children with neurological disorders, for people who are dealing with certain things. So the majority of our business is PC, butyrate, balance oil, and electrolyte and Elite. The other products are there, but are definitely not. They're not our star products and our core products.
Okay, let's along the lines of butyrate. Let's do a deep dive into that, because most people will associate the term butyrate with the keto diets, because beta hydroxybutyrate is the salt that everybody's all up in arms about and getting all giddy over. So, Dr. Tom, can you give us a little bit of an insight into butyrate and its essential role in the health of the gut and what other functions it serves in the body?
Butyrate is an endogenous substance manufactured by colonic bacteria with a fermentation of resistant starch, of which we eat very little. Not too many people eat room temperature mashed potatoes or rice. People don't like underripe bananas, and they eat too many skins from the beans. They have social difficulties they desire not to face. So since we don't get enough resistant starch, we have butyrate. And a knowledgeable physician who meets someone with a gastric distress problem will look for a butyrate level and have a stool test done to determine what butyrate is there, because butyrate provides a happy hotel for your 400 varieties of colonic bacteria to live in. And that needs to be established or reestablished, but it goes beyond that. The fact that phosphatidylcholine creates 70% of the mucus layer is important, but the bacteria have a hierarchy, and the gut is filled with pernicious bacteria as well as the beneficent. We want the good guys to be the king of the hill, and that's what butyrate does. But it goes beyond that. It's an anti-inflammatory molecule. It helps to reduce, whatever cytokines cause inflammation, and there are quite a few of those beyond just interleukins, and it quells that. It helps to sequester ammonia that people manufacture from faulty protein metabolism. If you ever smell the baby diaper smells of ammonia, it's because the babies aren't mature enough to handle any proteins. But the same thing happens to senior citizens. Sometimes their urine smells strongly of ammonia, or it's a chemical smell. Butyrate helps to control that. But when ammonia gets into the brain, it causes foggy thinking. And that can happen to anybody at any age, usually starting in middle age and getting a little beyond that. It's a histone deacetylase inhibitor. And this is kind of a tough idea, but if you think of a spiral binder that you had taking notes in college, and you stick a pencil in there, and if you were to uncoil that spiral binder and recoil it, you would need that pencil to help the recoil to maintain the proper form. Well, that's what happens when your DNA unwinds during cell division. You need something around which it can wind up and wind up straight again. And that's what butyrate does. It helps that to maintain its structure and its function. So I'm not allowed to say this, but I know people who've used it to cure to treat soft tissue disease, including cancers of the colon, breast, prostate, and cervix. I know people who have done it, and 30 years later, here they are. So I can't say that they're cured. And I know of a 90-year-old woman who died not from colon cancer. She died with the colon cancer, but she died from other things, all because of butyrate.
Butyrate's awesome.
It's just if there were only one supplement that the government said you could take, that's the one I would pick.
Really?
Yes.
It's involved in that much stuff, I guess, supporting it. You would put that above PC in terms of importance to the body?
Yes. Yes, I would.
And I think this is something nobody was even talking about a couple years ago.
No. Well,
It's on the rise because of keto, but that's such a small component of what it does.
right. Well, that plus our understanding of the gut microbiome is still in an infancy, and so as our understanding of that, it's been concomitant with our understanding of butyrate and the role it's been playing in gut health and just anti-inflammatory benefits and all things Dr. Tom was just elaborating on. The two products y'all have a sodium potassium butyrate blend and then a calcium magnesium blend. I guess why the two different ones instead of just making one that contains all four minerals, or just different matters of the two? Obviously, sodium and potassium have that give and take kind of relationship, as do calcium and magnesium. Why not put them all into one product together?
Why not? Why not? Initially, sodium butyrate was a drug. Mm-hmm. It was called sodium phenylbutyrate, and it's still available. You can get it prescribed at $15 per capsule. So a bottle of 100 capsules will cost you more than $10. And it was discovered serendipitously that sodium butyrate will do the same thing as sodium phenylbutyrate in the absence of the phenyl entity.
Right.
And so it was marketed first, and that's where most of the research is. Sodium butyrate usually is marketed to people who have very low sodium content because they metabolize it away, or people who sweat profusely in exercise that lasts longer than an hour, or people who work in a steel mill, a bakery, or any place where it's hot, so they need sodium replacement. That's fine. Sodium potassium butyrate would be aimed at the same population, but for those who are concerned about sodium-sensitive blood pressure, because potassium antagonizes sodium. If sodium is high, potassium can lower it. If potassium is high, sodium can lower it.
Right.
Then the calcium magnesium butyrate is a patent that Body Bio holds. And that was designed for people who are shallow in those two minerals. And with the American farming agricultural practices being less than they were 50 years ago, the amount of minerals left in the soil and in our food is questionable. And most people in America, probably 90% or more, are shallow in magnesium. This would help to fix that. The calcium and magnesium have always been in balance with each other. But people are concerned about the sodium. They don't realize without sodium, you can't pick up a pencil or blink your eye or wiggle your toes. And sodium is the main thing that causes muscles to contract. Calcium tells sodium, pick up the pencil. Magnesium tells potassium to put it down. So we have those which are excitatory, those which are inhibitory. They got to be in balance. And that not only comes from butyrate, but also that's where the electrolyte comes in. Mm-hmm. The people are electrolyte shallow, and they wonder why they wind up in a hospital with palpitations. And all of a sudden, oh, your potassium levels are out of whack. Well, we don't get 4,700 milligrams of potassium a day because it's not in our food, and we don't eat the right foods anyway. It's a lot easier to feed a kid a bag of potato chips for $1 than it is to get him to eat his broccoli.
Yeah, we have a 2-year-old, and it's a challenge trying to get her to eat vegetables regularly. There's a few that she'll do, but then every 2 months, it's a cycle of she doesn't want something that what she wanted the previous 8 weeks, she doesn't want for the next 8 weeks, and so it's an ongoing guessing game. So yeah, it's amazing how toddlers mimic the diet patterns of healthy adults in the U.S., or not quasi-healthy adults. I'll put it that way.
It takes 11 introductions to get a child to accept a different food. So it might take 11 times, but don't do it 11 times the same day.
Right, yeah.
I have a 2-year-old, and I discuss, so I call, of course, we call water Wawa, and Mommy's Wawa always has electrolyte in it. So he thinks Mommy's Wawa is special, and then he loves electrolyte. So that's how I've gotten him to take electrolyte.
When my grandson refused to eat squash, my daughter called it hot cucumbers. He liked cucumbers. He ate the hot cucumbers. He requested hot cucumbers, and it's all in the marketing.
I love it.
Wow. So what else? How long, I guess, does the R&D process go on before y'all consider bringing a new product to market?
That's a tough question because you have to decide who wants to buy it.
Yeah.
If you don't have a market for it, it doesn't make any sense to look it up. But there are so many things and that people, well, you got a good question. Why not mix all the minerals in the butyrate? First of all,
Yeah.
the capsule would be as big as your thumb, so that put that out of the ballpark.
Right.
How do you know what people want to buy? That's where Jessie comes in. She's the one that finds out what the people want.
Staying on top of market trends,
Yeah.
staying on top of what's going on in these circles. I myself am a self-proclaimed health freak, biohacker type, not taking it to such a crazy level, but really watching what's going on. But right now we happen to be in a place where the things that we do make are becoming more and more prevalent. So we're actually not really even thinking at the moment. There are some things that we're exploring making in the future, especially because we have such a great liposomal product that combined with other products could be really beneficial. But we're really double downing on PC butyrate, balance oil, and Elite.
All right, well, let's discuss the balance oil then. So we know there's essential fatty acids, and your typical run-of-the-mill person is going to be way out of whack in the ratio of omega-3s they have to omega-6s. Give us a little bit of insight. And so over the years, omega-6s have gotten a bad rap because of how, poor the American diet is. Give us some insight into some of the good aspects of omega-6s and what we can do to better enhance the ratios that we have.
I will start by saying it's probably our most confusing product, and it's the most misleading in terms of the market and what people say about omega-6, because there's various different essential fatty acids that can be associated with omega-6. So it's difficult. And even omega-3, I mean, you have EPA, DHA, linoleic. It's just very confusing. So it's something that we focused on a lot. It's something that we've watched over time through our blood tests and how it can change in people's bodies. And a lot of that has to do with dietary changes. So our balance oil is an awesome product, but you have to be committed to a different lifestyle. You can't be eating in a restaurant every night with food covered in canola oil. And that's a huge part of balance oil, but you could talk about the specifics within what happens in the essential fatty acid pathway.
I used to go to restaurants and collect their used oil and pour it through a pair of pantyhose, then through a coffee filter and burn it in my diesel truck. Because that's what happens when oils are heated and reheated and reheated. Their chemistry changes. The good intentions are gone, and those oils become rancid. And when you go to a supermarket and you buy an oil in a clear bottle under fluorescent light, it probably has undergone considerable chemical changes. Omega-6 fatty acids are anti-inflammatory, but they also have a modicum of inflammatory character. People don't understand without inflammation, you don't heal. If you get cut shaving, you need white cells to fight bacteria. You need platelets to plug the hole. You need fibrin around which the platelets can gather so you don't bleed to death from a minor cut. That's inflammation. That's omega-6s. Once that begins and all the platelets and the white blood cells are there, now the omega-3s come in and they restore it. They fix the cut blood vessel, they fix your skin, and you need the two of them. What we presume for people who will use Body Biobalance oil is that their diet will change, that they will give up processed foods, they will give up cheap supermarket oils and substitute bioactive oils. Now, there's a term, the semantics of which have caused a lot of disagreement. Anything you eat is bioactive because you need food for energy. It becomes so bioactive that the energy builds up around some people's waist and they have this big pack of energy that they got to lose 40 pounds of. But actually, bioactive means what will add to the benefit of the cell membrane. Cell membranes need to vibrate. Omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids help those cells and those membranes to vibrate. Without vibration, there's no activity. And people who stuff themselves with sugar and saturated fats interfere with that cell vibration, and that cell doesn't know what to do. It gets confused, and when it finally dies through apoptosis and it makes a copy of itself, the copy is aberrant, it's renegade, it's irregular, and it's on its way to some kind of pathological condition because they had the wrong thing in their body. The body biobalanced soil will move in and push some of that garbage out, but you still need to stop putting the garbage in. So based on research started in the 70s in Israel by Dr. Shlomo Yehuda, he realized that 4-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is ideal. Simultaneously, unbeknownst to him, was Dr. Artemis Simopoulos was doing similar study, and she came up with the same conclusion, 4-to-1. In certain pathologies, a ratio of 2.5-to-1 may be more appropriate, but 4-to-1 is the basic ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s. And you need those because the body has a hard time making some conversions. So you need to get them from an outside source. And here we got fluidity being added to the cell membrane, and you're going to be able to use your energy better. And people don't have to take these oils off the spoon. You can put it into soups and salads. You mix it 50-50 with olive oil to make salad dressing. You can put it in your oatmeal. You put it into a smoothie. Omega-6s are transdermal. There are people who've got eczema and other skin conditions that have been ameliorated just by rubbing it on.
Should they keep it refrigerated, or can they? Obviously, heat is going to degrade some of the oils in there, so they shouldn't heat it too much. So would it be best served to only including it in like lukewarm or cold applications?
At the end, you can mix it with butter 50-50 and pour it on your vegetable. 110 degrees is about the limit it can stand. That's Fahrenheit.
Okay.
And we have a machine that emulates the inside of a UPS truck. 110 degrees for 2 weeks and the oil will not degrade, but you do not cook with an omega-3 or an omega-6 fatty acid. People got so hung up on the value of sunflower oil that farmers began to breed high oleic acid sunflower, with which you can cook because it has the same fundamental fatty acids as olive oil. And without the high linolenic acid sunflower oil, we had to move over to safflower oil because it is high in omega-6s. And it's still delicate. You can't cook with it, but it is strong enough to help you.
If somebody's looking to adjust their omega-6 to omega-3 ratio in a more beneficial way, should they do that through blood tests, or should they just assume if I've been eating like your typical person, if my diet's in need of an overhaul, so should they just start swapping out the garbage and eating better, or do they actually need to be concerned with doing maybe some kind of blood tests to see what their fatty acid ratios are?
It doesn't hurt, because not only can we determine what your ratio of fatty acids is, but we can determine what kind of schmutz might be hanging on your cells. Mm-hmm. Dirt, schmutz. Right. What is there that doesn't belong there by looking at fatty acid imbalances? Some fatty acids promote some diseases. Some fatty acids inhibit some diseases. Once we find out the fatty acid balance, and there are about 40 that can be tested on, but there are probably 100 we don't even know about yet, then we can determine what would help you. But you have to be willing to change your diet. And some people can't afford that. Well, that's not true. You can afford to change your diet. They perceive healthy food as more expensive, but you have a choice. You can give it to the grocer or you can give it to the doctor.
Well put, well put. Let's talk a little bit about the research library that y'all have on campus there at Body Bio. On the website, there's some high praise on it. So it's got over $1 million worth of medical literature in-house there. So give the listeners a little bit of insight into what all consists of the research center there.
Dr. Kane's major thrust was neurological and neuromuscular diseases, including things like autism and ALS, adrenoleukodystrophy, X-linked syndrome problems. And that is where her interest in fatty acids came, because fatty acids and phosphatidylcholine are indicated to resolve some of those problems. Most of the books in here have to do with that, but one organ leads to another. My special strong point is cardiology. And since we found out the connection between the gut and the brain by way of the vagus nerve, the heart is in the middle of that traffic between your gut and your brain. So that concern ties in with everything else. And since the body is a unified mass, all these books deal with every possible body part you could think of. I've seen some books in here about body parts I didn't even know we had. And
it's tying it all together. It's looking what's
yeah.
being put out there. It's seeing.
We have 100,000 medical papers here. I can't say I read them all because of the time it takes, but I read a bunch of them in the last 12 years.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of information. Everything we say on our website is backed by science. All the blog pieces that we write have references at the end. So anybody who questions what we say can find out that our veracity is veracity. You know, the internet has become the largest source of misinformation since a certain digest magazine used to be in everybody's bookcase.
Yep.
And people grab for the first thing they see. And I get questions every day, 4 or 5 times a day, that have to do with misinformation. And it's comforting to know that I can help resolve some people's misconceptions.
Mm-hmm. As y'all have migrated more towards trying to go straight for the consumer base, as in addition to working with doctors and hospitals and sourcing your products there, how have you seen the industry evolve over the past 5 or 10 years?
I think there's more people taking supplements than ever before. I think the last research I read was 77% of Americans are taking supplements. I think that efficacy is extremely important to consumers now. And a lot of that comes from the practitioners speaking about their experience with it. And whether it's clinical trials or a doctor saying that they trust this and they've used it, I think people want to know that things are effective. I think they want to know that they will actually have value and show results. So I think that those are definitely huge trends. And it's something that we are trying to balance the best of, keeping our heartland of our doctors and our practitioners happy with our products. And we never would change any of our products for the consumers. It's really one and the same for us.
One of the biggest lies people hear is that you can get all the nutrition you need from your food. The first assignment I got from Mr. Kane in 2007 was to follow up on a paper that was brand new at the University of Texas, where Dr. Davis studied the nutritional profile of 43 garden crops and compared and contrasted that nutritional profile with the same crops from 1960s. And it was discovered that out of 43, all 43 presently have 50% or less of the nutritional value they had 50 years ago.
It's scary.
And there are numerous reasons. Hybridization is one. People think the USDA exists to help the consumer. No, it exists to help the farmer make money and stay viable. And if a farmer can produce more crop with less labor and less financial output, good for him. And there's where hybrids came in. And then soil, it's very expensive to rotate crops, especially on a 1,000-acre farm.
Right.
So the farmers stick with the crops they know that are going to bring in $1 or $2, and they put in artificial fertilizers, which are not nearly as well assimilated as natural ones from horse manure and whatever natural substances there may be. So the food supply is not what it used to be. And it's not stored the way it used to be. Water-soluble nutrients dissipate into the air. And in the 1980s, the Japanese discovered that fumigants, which at one time were required before a plant could cross state lines, deplete the B complex in certain crops. And by the time you get them, there's hardly anything left. What you see in a supermarket here in New Jersey in January, you call it fresh. It's not fresh. It's raw. It might have been fresh 3 weeks ago.
Right.
But it's right. And the reason they wet it is to stop some of the dissipation of water-soluble nutrients. So when that water evaporates, so does the vitamin B. It goes with it. So you need supplements.
Do you think that going the organic route, because the organic diets and foods are heaped on with praise, saying they're more nutrient dense, they're better for you, they're higher quality. In your opinion, do you think there's going to be much in a micronutrient difference between an organic banana and a conventionally grown banana?
It's the spray.
Pesticides.
Plants have their own defense mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
There is a group of chemicals called salvestrols that plants manufacture, and it helps to fend off insects, fungus, and bacteria. And as soon as a farmer sprays, the plant has what is called philosophically a threptic soul, that a plant needs to communicate with its fellow plants. And whether that's so or not, I'm not sure, but nonetheless, plants manufacture their own defense mechanism. When they get sprayed, if a plant can meditate upon itself, it says, I don't have to make any defense. The spray is doing all the work. Well, it's been discovered that salvestrols are anti-cancer. There are physicians who have come to our conferences who will speak about the virtues of salvestrols that come only from organic plants. Now, they don't look pretty,
right?
Not on the outside, but they're pretty on the inside. Nutritionally, the differences are probably minimal, and it's better to have a sprayed piece of broccoli than none at all. But those that are frozen are probably more healthy than those that are not, because there was not enough time for the nutrients to become compromised. It's required that anything frozen needs to be picked, packed, blanched, and frozen within 5 hours. You get a really big company, the one that I prefer starts with a B. Their company, they freeze within 2 hours. And you've got something with the nutrients locked in, whereas that broccoli that's been 3 weeks old in the supermarket, it's a shriveled piece of nothing.
Right. Since we just mentioned that you probably can't get all of the essential nutrients you need from food, which do you think multivitamins are a must-have for most people? And if so, is the generic store brand a good enough coverall to fill in the gaps, or do people need to find like the premium quality top dollar multivitamins in order to get the minerals they might be missing?
People like to have vitamins made from all food, but if you did, you'd wind up taking 10 capsules a day, because it's hard. What you do is you would dehydrate the food, remove the cellulose, and hopefully what's left are the nutrients. Mm-hmm. But then you have to examine them to find out, well, gee, what's left? The body can recognize the difference between synthetic and natural vitamin E. It might be able to determine the difference between synthetic and natural vitamin C, but most vitamin C is made from corn anyway, and that's about as natural as you can get.
Right.
Synthetic vitamin, it's the quality of what you start with. Now, my wife makes homemade pasta, and it's different from what you buy in the store. And the quality is different, and the freshness is different. And the same thing with vitamin ingredients. Where did they come from? If you have the nerve to do so, call a company and ask them for a certificate of analysis. That's not the Pope. He's busy today. So, yeah, the kind you get at the drugstore for $1, at the dollar store for $1, no, you don't want those. You get one that's made with pharmaceutical grade ingredients that are guaranteed pure, potent, wholesome, and consistent from batch to batch. And except for vitamin E, it doesn't make much difference where they come from. Synthetic vitamin E is made from acetate, the stuff that the old-fashioned overhead projector film was made. And the big producer of acetate is Kodak. It's left over from making film. I don't know if it's still that way today, but it was years ago. And
the amount of knowledge here.
It's amazing.
You want the kind that comes from wheat germ oil or from some other source. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you need a multivitamin, and it does make a difference where you get it from. Because R&D, it's not cheap. And not only that, but we send our phosphatidylcholine out for testing, and we send it out a couple of times before it goes to the consumer. It's $900 every test.
Have y'all thought about putting or publishing those third-party lab tests on the website? Because we're starting to see that be, especially for like the pre-workouts and proteins on the market, which have been notorious for being spiked or underdosed with things or inactive forms of certain nutrients. Have y'all gotten any kind of requests from consumers, or is there any interest from within the company to start publishing the lab tests on the site just to kind of open up another layer of transparency to consumers?
Yeah, we're definitely looking at it.
Yeah, there are companies that do that. Some highly reputable companies. I respect a lot of the companies out there because they have a good product, they're good at what they do, and their products are efficacious. I don't want to start naming names, but they have a certificate of analysis available online. And that's something that we wish to explore as soon as we get all the mechanism involved straightened out.
Gotcha. Yeah. Heading into 2020, what can we expect from BodyBio as a company?
I think the year is going to begin with a new website, which I think will be really exciting. I think it's going to make things more clear. It's going to make it more understandable. When people go to butyrate, you'll be able to see a section on which one is right for me, why it's right for me, a lot of the key uses for all of our products. And throughout the year, it's really diving into the strategy behind how do we put PC and butyrate, most importantly, really at the forefront of cellular health and what it means, and how do we put ourselves out there more. I think for a really long time, we've been kind of a player in the space, but very quiet, and we're trying to be much more loud about who we are and tell people about the story of BodyBio and how we are maintaining our integrity.
Do you think social media is helpful or hurtful in getting your message out there as a brand and educating consumers?
I think it's helpful. I think I've met, for the longest time, we didn't have any social media a year ago. It's all been within this year. I've been the one on Instagram, and it's amazing to see how many people use our products. It's amazing to talk to the people that are using the products. It's awesome for me to hear why, how, and if a doctor prescribed it or not, or how it's changed their life, how it's changed their mom's life. And that for me has been awesome. Just to meet the people who have been taking our products for so long and learn more about our consumers has been so fascinating. So I think in that respect, it really helps. There's a lot of junk out there, and there's a lot of good companies out there. And if we can just continue to put the science out there and educate people on what we know, I think it'll be really helpful for us.
Awesome. Anything you'd like to add, Dr. Tom?
To social media?
I have a fan club because anytime somebody has a question, they say, ask Dr. Tom. Yeah, if somebody would send me some cookies, that would go a long way to getting more answers. But no, I have nothing to add. It's an exciting field to be in. Yeah. I wish I had started it a long time ago.
Yeah. Excellent, guys. Well, thank you very much for your time today on the podcast. This was fun. I'd like to get both of you back on at some point in the coming weeks, and we can go do a little bit deeper dive, possibly onto getting into the biohacking sphere and where people can really start as kind of like a beginner's guide into assessing where to start with everything.
Got to send cookies, though. I just said that.
I will put out a request. Listeners, if your Dr. Tom requests cookies, what is your favorite type?
Oatmeal.
Oatmeal raisin or just oatmeal?
Doesn't make any difference as long as there's oats in it.
Okay, awesome. All right, guys. Well, this is the part where you can shamelessly plug anything and everything you want to do. So where can everybody reach you, and why should they go for BodyBio?
Bodybio.com. Go to our website, check us out, and learn more just about why we're different in the space. I think that's what sets us apart.
No question is unanswered. You have a question, we'll answer it.
And we're humans. Call us. You can talk to him.
Yeah, you can talk to me.
You can ask me questions. Somebody called me to complain about a bottle. It was like, okay, well, you know what? You're right. I'm going to look into more sustainable bottling options. We're a family business. We're a small office here, and we're doing everything just the way it is here. So give us a call if you have a question, and we'll help you out.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you guys for joining the podcast, and I look forward to talking soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.